They vanished from history books. Their castles turned into museums. Their titles stripped away. But what if I told you they never really disappeared? Because behind global banks, billion-dollar corporations, and even quiet political deals still move the hands of royal families most people forgot ever existed. Families whose bloodlines trace back centuries, whose power didn't end when their crowns fell. They just learned to rule differently. Gemstone, here's the shocking part. Some of these families still own pieces of the companies that control your daily life. From energy to tech to luxury brands. One old dynasty quietly helped shape the modern banking system. Another owns land so vast, you could fit entire countries inside it. And one royal family? They're said to influence world markets without ever showing their faces. But who are they? How do they hold on to power in a world that left kings and queens behind? And why are their names almost never mentioned anymore? The truth behind this will surprise you. Let me show you exactly how the forgotten royals still control the modern world. Once upon a time, power was simple. You ruled by birth. You wore a crown, and everyone knew your name. But after wars, revolutions, and democracy spread, monarchies fell. Crowns were traded for parliaments, thrones for offices. It looked like the age of kings had ended, but it didn't. It just changed shape. Today, most people think royal power exists only in fairy tales or history classes. But behind the scenes, something very different happened. Many royal families, especially in Europe and Asia, didn't lose their fortunes. They simply moved them into land, companies, and trusts that still exist today. Think of them like silent shareholders of the modern world. Take the House of Liechtenstein, a small country, barely visible on a map. But its ruling family reportedly controls one of Europe's biggest private banks, ELiTE Group. The family's estimated wealth? Over $5 billion. Yet, they stay quiet, almost invisible. Or look at the House of Windsor, the British royal family. They appear symbolic. But the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall bring in hundreds of millions every year in property income. It's not just palaces. It's prime land, business parks, shopping streets, even farmland. Then there's Monaco, a city-state built on luxury. The Grimaldis family has ruled it for over 700 years. While their country size is smaller than Central Park, it's home to some of the richest people alive. Plot twist. These royals aren't stuck in the past. They've evolved. They use trusts, holding companies, and offshore networks. Their names might not appear on company boards, but their fingerprints are everywhere. Now here's where things get really interesting. Because these families don't just hold wealth. They still hold influence. And that leads us to the first major revelation. Imagine this. It's the 1800s. Empires rule the world. But wars are expensive. Monarchs need money. So they start building alliances not just with armies, but with banks. Enter the Rothschild family. They weren't royals by blood, but they became financiers to kings. And in doing so, they created one of the most powerful networks in history. Fast forward to today, many royal houses still operate through similar webs of quiet control. Let's look at the House of Liechtenstein again. While their country is tiny, the family itself became a global investment powerhouse. Their private bank, ELiTE, reportedly manages over $300 billion in assets. That's more than the GDP of some countries. They own stakes in companies across Europe, Asia, and the US. Everything from real estate to energy firms. But here's the twist. Their name rarely appears publicly. Because the assets are held under foundations. A legal structure that keeps ownership private. Now, think about how this translates to influence. When you quietly control the money that fuels global businesses, you don't need a throne. Then there's the Wittelsbach family, once rulers of Bavaria, Germany. Their titles are gone, but their wealth? Not quite. They still hold luxury estates, art collections, and partnerships in energy firms. And some family members sit on advisory boards of multinational companies. Plot twist. The lost crowns turned into hidden shareholders. And it's not just Europe. In the Middle East, royal families never lost power. In fact, they've expanded it. The House of Saud, ruling family of Saudi Arabia, controls Aramco, the most profitable oil company in the world. Its revenue once hit $600 billion a year. That's more than Apple, Amazon, and Google combined at one point. Now think about that scale of influence. While Western royals turned silent, others, like the Gulf dynasties, turned global. They invested in luxury brands, football clubs, and even Hollywood studios. Every time you watch a blockbuster, shop a luxury brand, or fill your car's tank, you're likely crossing paths with an empire that began as royalty. But if you think that's wild, wait until you hear about the families that control global real estate without anyone realizing it. Who actually owns the land you live on? In Britain, for example, the Crown Estate owns over $20 billion worth of land and property. That includes parts of London's most valuable areas, like Regent Street and St. James's. Technically, it's the Crown's property, but it generates hundreds of millions every year, feeding directly into royal finances. But that's just the visible part. Beneath the surface, entire land networks are tied to old royal families across Europe. Take the Duke of Westminster, connected to the British aristocracy. His family estate, Grosvenor Group, owns more than 300 acres in London alone, worth tens of billions. The Grosvenors aren't kings, but their lineage ties back to royal alliances centuries old. Their power today, purely financial, but incredibly enduring. In Austria, descendants of the Habsburgs still control historic estates, vineyards, and foundations. In Spain, the House of Alba owns over 30,000 acres of land. Reportedly, they're among Europe's biggest landowners, quietly collecting rents from farms, urban projects, and even hotels. And while we rarely see their faces in politics, their names appear in property registries and luxury development projects. It's royal power, modernized. Here's the fascinating part. Many of these families use trusts and holding companies in Switzerland, Monaco, and Luxembourg. This keeps their ownership layers deep and hidden. You might see a corporate name like Lancaster Holdings or Cornwall Properties, but behind it is centuries-old royal wealth still growing. Now, sources suggest that in London alone, over 15% of prime property is connected, directly or indirectly, to old aristocratic or royal lines. And this matters because real estate equals power. Control the land, and you control development, rent, and even zoning influence. But wait, there's a twist. A new class of neo-royals has entered the picture. Families from Asia and the Middle East who've used royal capital to buy influence in the West. The Al Thani family of Qatar, for example, owns chunks of London, Paris, and New York real estate. They've bought luxury brands like Harrods, Valentino, and even stakes in Empire State Realty Trust. And behind it all, the same ancient principle. Land equals legacy. But what happens when these royal holdings cross borders and merge with corporate power? That's where we reach the most shocking revelation of all. Here's where everything connects. When we think of modern power, we think of corporations, tech billionaires, and governments. But there's a hidden layer where royal wealth meets corporate structure. In the UK, royal estates quietly invest in green energy firms and financial funds. In Europe, royal foundations fund banks that lend to governments. In the Gulf, oil wealth transforms into global tech investments through sovereign funds. The result? A global network of influence that isn't controlled by one person, but by families that have existed for hundreds of years. According to multiple reports, royal-related investment arms collectively manage trillions of dollars. These include sovereign wealth funds, private banks, and trusts tied to royal houses. For example, the Qatar Investment Authority controls over $500 billion, owning shares in Volkswagen, Barclays, and luxury hotels worldwide. The House of Windsors estates generate consistent returns reinvested into UK corporations. The Liechtenstein Global Trust, LGT, manages vast private fortunes across continents. These networks are not illegal, not secret, just quiet. They operate under the radar because the families learned something crucial. Power today isn't about ruling people. It's about owning systems. That's why they invest in infrastructure, tech, and green energy, the future of global wealth. And when you connect all these dots, you see a web, spanning from Monaco's harbors to London skyscrapers to Dubai's towers. One royal family might fund a company. Another might own its land. A third might supply its energy. And together, they shape the flow of global wealth. So while the crowns may have faded from sight, the royal influence never ended. It just became modern. So what does this mean for us, today's generation? It means that history didn't vanish. It evolved quietly into the structures we live under. When you walk through a luxury mall in London, shop at a brand like Burberry, or watch a soccer game at a stadium funded by royal investment, you're part of a world built by forgotten crowns. And that matters because it reminds us, money moves through time. Power rarely disappears. It only changes its face. In many ways, this explains why certain families remain immune to market shocks. They own assets that don't lose value: land, luxury, and legacy. Experts suggest that old royal money still plays a stabilizing role in Europe's economy. Others argue it limits opportunity, locking wealth inside old systems. Either way, it's fascinating, because while tech billionaires rise and fall within decades, royal dynasties endure across centuries. Plot twist: some of the same family lines that funded the first banks now invest in blockchain startups. History repeating itself, just updated. And maybe that's the biggest lesson for us. If you want lasting influence, don't chase trends. Build legacy. Here's the final twist. The reason these royal families still control so much isn't just money. It's time. While most people think in years, they think in centuries. They don't invest for quick returns. They invest for their great-great-grandchildren. That's why their wealth survived wars, revolutions, and recessions. It's built to last. So when we look at today's billionaires, many will fade within decades. But the forgotten royals? They'll still be there, behind the scenes, shaping the next chapter. Maybe they've just traded crowns for companies, castles for capital. But the essence of royalty, control, continuity, and quiet influence still rules the modern world. And maybe that's the biggest secret of all. If this opened your eyes, you're just beginning to see the hidden layers of global power. So what do we learn? That the age of kings never truly ended. It just moved into boardrooms, trust funds, and luxury real estate. The Liechtensteins, the Windsors, the Grimaldis, the Thanis. They're not relics. They're architects of modern wealth, and understanding how they built and protected power for centuries can teach anyone how influence really works today. So if you enjoyed uncovering the truth behind hidden royal empires, hit subscribe for more stories like this. Next, watch Inside the Billionaire Islands No One Can Visit, where I'll show you how private islands and secret sovereignties hide even deeper power networks. Now I want to hear from you. Back-end index pointing right. Do you think old royal families should still hold such power? Or should it finally fade with time? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story isn't over yet.